work session for the Plain Township Board of Trustees for today, Tuesday, October 10th, 2017. The topic of the work session is the retirement of Chaplain Bob Miller, Fire Department. I'm going to turn it over to our Chief, Chuck Schallenberg.
Thank you. On behalf of the Plain Township Trustees and myself, we appreciate everybody coming out tonight. We got a couple calls going, so there should be some other people coming in here in a few minutes. So I personally want to thank you for your service for us. I mean, you've always been there when we've called, and you've taken it a little farther with the county program. And Chief Sabo and Chief Reed here were instrumental in getting the whole chaplain program kind of going. And so I want to turn that over to him because he's got a little bit more dates and times on when you started. And at the end there, we've got some things to give you. And we do have a cake and some water, some light refreshments over in the conference room that anybody's welcome to stay and have some of that before they take off.
Good evening, everybody. What I have here is a bulletin to Chief Sabo from Captain Bill Reed, October 24th, 2006. Recommendation for Fire Department Chaplain. Chief, here are the names and a general background on the two gentlemen that have contacted our department about fulfilling the role of Fire Department Chaplain for our department. Firefighter Steve Ash and myself have met with them, and we are very excited about the credentials that the two of them bring to the position. It is our belief that they both will be a great asset to our department and will do a wonderful job working as a team and representing our department here and throughout the community. They are good friends and currently work together in church activities, serving in the same community. The other chaplain was Pastor Timothy McCollum, who was moved to another church out of the area, I believe not long after we started the program. And then there's Pastor Bob Miller, who was my personal pastor at Bethany United Methodist. He worked in biochemistry at the Cleveland Clinic prior to going into ministry. 10 years he's been an ordained minister. 2 years at his current church. Was an unofficial fire chaplain for the Negley Fire Department in a past assignment, and is currently working on a doctorate in ministry at, what was it? Iliff School of Theology. Okay. The Fire Department Chaplain is an important position in the history of the American Fire Service. The chaplain is the person behind the scenes that keeps an organization stable and ready to serve. And it does that by keeping its people at their spiritual and psychological best with focus and direction. I just want to thank you for all your service that you've done the past 11 years for our department and the County Firefighters Association and firefighters throughout the county and maybe even our bordering counties. I know that you are the face of the fire service for a lot of families, and you know, you were the last of the fire service that they saw when they lost their loved ones, so that when they were in their time of need. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and pass it back over to Chief Schallenberg.
I know all the guys aren't here tonight, but they, some of them, you know, called me today, said they couldn't come up. They all appreciate the work you did. You know, whether it be at, you know, we were at Clarence's funeral when we had our chief pass away, and some other big events throughout the county. So I'm sure, you know, you have Captain Cohen and his brother Bob Cohen and Jerry Markle here tonight. So all supportive of that. So I think that brings a lot to you. You attended fire prevention breakfast, this EMS breakfast. So you've done a lot of things, and we appreciate that, representing Plain Township. So with that being said, I'd like to have the trustees come down and present you a couple things from Plain Township that you can keep for your service time with us. So, and I think they want to do a little photo op there at the end to get some of the guys up here and all that stuff. So great.
Well, Pastor Miller, this is a little unusual situation because I've never had to do this before, sitting on that side of the desk. So it's kind of bittersweet for me because when they wanted to first get this started, I was certainly in favor of it because I knew the value of it. What I didn't expect when we hired you and we brought you on was the amount of dedication that you were going to have, and not only dedicated to us, but obviously by becoming involved in the county. I think all those ceremonies are so critical to what it is that we do, but more importantly to our families as well. So I know that the board certainly is appreciative of what you've done, the fire department is appreciative of what you've done, the community is appreciative of what you've done. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it was probably a labor of love.
Absolutely.
So you probably were as much engaged in doing it as we were appreciating you doing it. So I think I'm going to do the badge.
Okay.
If you guys don't mind.
No, you do. Whatever.
So on behalf of the entire Plain Township community, I want to thank you for the years of service that you've provided, and we appreciate everything that you've done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Pastor Miller, to congratulate you on retirement, and I can understand that literally the times you're dealing with the brethren and so forth are probably some of the most challenging, and obviously how that wears emotionally on you. Spiritual strength obviously is what helps carry you through and continuing to do that, but as well is what helps these guys and their families. So I haven't got to work directly with you, over my tenure. I'm genuinely appreciative for the service and sacrifice that you've made on the behalf of the township for our residents and our gentlemen here. So I'd like to present you simply with this certificate that says Plain Township Fire and Rescue Certificate of Appreciation is hereby granted to Pastor Robert Miller on October 10th, 2017. Plain Township appreciates your 11 years of dedicated service. Your commitment to our organization will be missed by both members of the fire department and the residents of our community. Thank you.
I guess I get to present the helmet. Pretty much was already said from everyone. For me, just appreciation. I know when our guys go out, and I know families in needs, and I know I've been in that situation when my father, when he had his heart attacks and they had to show up at our house. You're people like in shock, and what better person that we had for you than you to comfort, because people need comfort on terrible times that, sometimes when they lose them, and sometimes not, God bless them, they're brought back to life. But having you, I remember when you came aboard in 2006, you said? I remember. So just appreciation for what you've done for our residents, to be there and comfort them in critical needs that they needed you. And well, we could probably say that, you were a godsend. That's why you were here for us. So I appreciate what you've done for our residents and for our township.
Thank you.
Thank you. Give you this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anything you'd like to add, or you?
Sure, I'd like to.
All right.
I just am very blessed. I was very blessed to be able to serve the Plain Township and the fire department. And I'm so grateful to Bill when he asked me to serve. It was when we United Methodist pastors are appointed to a church, we're appointed not only to the congregation but the community. And so it was really a good opportunity for me to give back to the community and serve not just the congregation but the community. So it was a wonderful opportunity, and I've just loved every minute of the 11 years. It was just great. And of course, then when these guys came along and invited me to be a part of the county association, it was like a kid in a candy store. So and I had the privilege of working with wonderful people. Obviously, you have the trustees, but also 3 wonderful chiefs, 2 of which are standing here. Chief Snyder is somewhere down south. But I remember the story that Bill Reed was talking about earlier. When I left at Plain Township and went to Alliance. I went to Chief Sable and said, well, Chief, this is it, I'm gonna have to resign, I'm moving away. And he said, no, you're not. And so he encouraged me to stay on, and so I was so grateful that he had the confidence to let me do that. And so it was a bit of a long-distance relationship, but it was still wonderful. So I want to thank each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart for allowing me to be a part of this township, and this fire department.
And we almost forgot the most important person. Your wife there for
Yep.
saying, for putting up with us all the years. Taking your hand home. So we do appreciate you letting us borrow. So.
No problem.
All right. So if you wanted to get a picture with some of the guys or something, so you'd have for a memento or whatever, and so that would be great. I mean, trustees, you want to go first there? Or
Sure.
yeah, that way.
Good. Chiefs. Wonderful. One right there. Two. That's a good one right there. 2, 3. Yep.
We know Mr. Steinberg can count to 3 now.
I practiced all day for that. Can we get some with all the
Yeah, you guys-
firefighters?
You want for the county or anything?
Yeah.
That way you can have something for your county.
let's do the county.
I didn't shoot any comments about you, I mean, ever count to 3.
They'll be mad at you if you
You
don't have
should've
any
seen me
pictures or
trying to
anything.
And normally it's like this.
I got you.
There you go.
1, 2, 3. For Schallenberger, one more time. 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
And I'll get those, and give them to Bill and get them to you, get them for Kathy Hart and all that. So.
Chief, we get you and your men up there with it.
You want guys want to come on up there? Did you want a picture or anything? No? No?
Come on,
Okay.
Haynes. Haynes, get in there. I'll stand here all day and heck, get in there.
What the balance is out.
Don't make me say your nickname, get in there.
Want to go?
Standing back, nobody will see it.
Want to put a couple on that end so we can get them all in here? How's that look?
There we go.
All right. Put the hands in front.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I won't count down.
I'm gonna make you count.
It's like spelling the alphabet backwards. I can't do it. So we gotta get a picture of you up here too. But
Again, I really appreciate your years of service. So. Chaplain?
Thank you.
You want to hold that helmet?
There you go.
that's a
So you want
good
to
one.
solo and then all good? Okay.
All together. Bill, scream just a little bit. There you go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Got him.
All right. Thank you very much, Rob.
We're going to call to order this meeting of the Plain Township Board of Trustees for Tuesday, October 10th. Everybody will stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Of course, we have our agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections by fellow board members or department heads at this time?
Mr. President, I have an addition under communication. It's a benefit barbecue fundraiser.
Okay. Do we have any other items? Okay, the agenda will stand as amended. And the first item is the sheriff's report, Sergeant Paul.
Good evening, everybody. So for September, we had a pretty busy month. Calls for service were 1,322, which is up like 34% from last year. We had 82 crashes, 12 of which were injury crashes, which were up from last year. We had 62 alarms between residential and business, was actually down from last year, so that's good. Traffic stops were way up. We had 208 for September, which was a 41% increase over 2016. Same with citations, we had 189, which was a 64% increase over last year. And arrests, 67, which was a 30% increase. We did 51 vacation checks. The OVI task force held 2 OVI checkpoints in Plain Township in September. Detective Ross was assigned 9 cases. He closed 3 of them, 2 being breaking and entering cases, and 1 injury hit skip crash. He's also identified a suspect in another B&E and returned $11,000 worth of property to the owner. And he's identified some suspects in some recent car break-ins as well. And then just our chart for the year, comparing last year, and then the 4-year look back, and you can see that this year for September, we were kind of pretty high over the last 4 years for this year.
And obviously, a portion of that is directly attributed to the additional deputies.
Yeah.
that are now on the road.
More deputies out on the
Do you
road.
guys feel, and I know it's hard to probably quantify, but with the extremely warm weather we've still continued to have, is that driving potentially at
Yeah, that's-
as well? Or?
Yeah, because more people are out and about, so we are getting those more calls for service, and, the guys with the extra guys on the street, they're being a lot more active with the traffic stops, and, so that citations go up, the arrests go up out of those, and, yeah, they're definitely being a lot more proactive. They're having the time to do that, so.
Correct. That's where we had wanted to get in the levy. Because I remember the exact verbiage where we had to be reactive. We wanted to get to the point where we were proactive.
Yeah, and they are being proactive with the protection.
We'll have a better trending analysis next year when
Yeah.
we've got a full year.
Full year.
Right.
So,
But still, it shows a pretty good.
And I think we delivered another new vehicle just last week, so they've received 2 new
Yes,
vehicles this month, so
so
some very,
realistically, based upon their equipment replacement cycle, we're only probably about 2, maybe 3 high mileage vehicles
down
that are,
from,
that are left, from.
yeah.
Yeah, we're cycling those out. Yes, the last Ford Explorer was delivered Wednesday, and, if I'm not mistaken, they're scheduled to go out and be built here either next week or the week after. They're scheduled to go out and be built.
We're in line where we're supposed to be at.
Yeah, so we're now on that point where it's going to have a couple
Like we used to.
Yeah.
of years.
That's
So it's
good,
good.
very good.
The one thing that's on here that you guys aren't taking credit for that I really do think is part of the activities, okay, the OVI checkpoints are an additional value that we get through the sheriff's office at no expense to taxpayer, but the meetings you guys have been doing with the board, some of these HOAs,
Yeah.
greatly appreciated. There's been a number of comments, compliments, and actually putting faces with names.
Yeah, it's good.
It's went a far way.
And it's good to go out and meet residents and,
Yeah.
put a face with their.
And we may reach out to continue to do those, because I think even that format, with us going first, somebody from the board there, you guys, because that takes a lot of questions away from what they actually wanted to know about. And I think the homeowners associations would like that format too.
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah.
Anytime? Any other questions?
Thank you, Sergeant.
Thanks.
Anybody in the audience have any questions for the sheriff? Okay, that'll conclude the sheriff's report. Unfinished business, Mrs. Campbell.
Thank you. At the last meeting, there was a complaint from a gentleman about the time of the garbage trucks and refuse trucks getting out in the morning. So the board was going to have some further discussion this time to see if they received any more complaints, and maybe what any follow-up would be.
I did get, from one of the homeowners associations over there, there was essentially 3 additional individuals that comments were forwarded along, and nothing too extensive. It was, hey, it'd be nice if we didn't have to hear it. Yeah, it drives me nuts. When we still take a look at the general facts here, 4 people out of a population of what we've got here, I think it probably behooves us, instead of just starting to get into all these home rule resolutions, to maybe somebody on our team make the call to those perpetrators and say, hey, we're getting complaints about this. You either need to adjust your times, or the board is going to consider actually putting in a home rule resolution that will restrict potentially the hours of refuge pickup. I will say, concerning, I know Lisa, you brought this up when we were chatting earlier today, you constrict those hours, you know, how soon they can come in the morning, pushes it later in the evening. You know, when you've got 6 to 8 months of warm weather, what's that gonna do for odor? Because then all of a sudden, oh, it stinks in my neighborhood because of the trash. Trash isn't picked up till later. So, I don't know what other comments.
I thought long and hard about this, and if we create a resolution to ban it all, that affects a lot of vendors. And if we're not getting complaints, why do we want to affect somebody's ability to be able to make a living? But I also think that if maybe we could find out who these vendors are and just get a representative from that company, have them come in, say, here's kind of what we're being confronted with. We have this in the bullpen ready to go. We don't want to pull that trigger right now. We want to just ask you to maybe change your schedule in that neighborhood a little bit. And they'll still start early somewhere. But if those people aren't complaining, maybe they can just change their schedule there.
Yeah, or the one complaint was early, and maybe if they just even waited a half hour.
Correct.
But if they talked, so if you want to forward me, I don't know who the company was, and I can make some phone calls.
It may be more than one.
Yeah,
I don't know what
okay.
I email that the resident.
That's the other issue. It may not
I think
just be
in this
one
situation, it's
company.
one,
Okay.
but if it comes up again, at least we'll have it, so that would be good.
I know in our neighborhood on 3 consecutive mornings, we have a different vendor.
That's how it is in my neighborhood, because not everybody has the
Correct.
same
Exactly.
company, nor do they have to. You know, you can find what services you best.
We're not getting into the business
No.
negotiations.
No.
Yeah, and the only I have to say, you guys both just perfectly said it. I don't really have much to add to it, but I know from the previous of all of us, the way we operate, usually we get a full room, we get petitions, we get a lot of allotments, people complaining about pretty close to the same issue. Then this board has always looked into it. We just have to be cautious because we start popping up these home rules resolutions. And
It's slippery slope.
yeah, it's a slippery slope because then the next group comes in and says, well, you did it for them. Can you look at something like this for us? We just have to be careful. But we're always open and ready to listen to our residents. And again, this was not a room full of residents that this was complaining, this was a handful. And not, no disrespect to them, but this,
Correct.
well said, both of you two, what you said, so I just think we need to be cautious.
Outside of that, I'll find that email, get it sent
Yeah.
to you.
And that closes unfinished business.
Okay, we'll leave you right with new business.
Thank you. Item number 1 is a resolution to approve and authorize payment to True Green Commercial.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Lino,
Yes.
Mr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mr. Hawes.
Yes.
And that's the end of new business.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. It's going to take us to fiscal officer's report. Mr. Wolf.
Thank you. Fiscal Officer number 1 is a request for resolution to authorize the payment of pending warrants in an amount of $329,146.91.
I will so move.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 2 is a request for a resolution to authorize payment of regular payroll in an amount not to exceed $250,000.
I'll move on fiscal officer number 2.
I'll second it.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 3 is a request for resolution to authorize payment for the following medical claims.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 4 is the financial report for September.
If anybody's got questions, feel free to see Tom afterwards.
Fiscal Officer number 5 is a request for resolution to authorize the following transfers.
I will so
I'll
move.
second it.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
And fiscal officer number 6 is a request for resolution that the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and its certification be and the same are hereby accepted, and be it further resolved that there be and is hereby levied on tax duplicate the rate of each tax necessary to be levied within and without the 10 mil limitation as follows.
So moved. Second. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
And that concludes the fiscal officer report.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Back to our administrator.
Thank you. When the Veterans Service Commission had their open house to dedicate their new building in Plain Township, we talked with Deanne Colby, who's the executive director, and she was just, of course, very passionate about her position and what they're able to do for veterans. But the one thing she brought up to Scott and John when they were there was that there's no program to help veterans and their dependents at the holiday time for gifts. They're able to give them an additional clothing allowance at that time, which is very helpful because they start school, you know, when it's warm, and then come winter, it's cold and you need, of course, additional clothes, but there's nothing for holidays. And our 2 board members said, why don't you work with the township? We'd love to come up with a program where we can do something to aid those veterans and their dependents. So Rob and I have took the ball from that point and created a program that we're calling Be a Toy Soldier. And that's why you see the tree out very, very early, because we want to do as much as we can to possibly get as many gifts as we can for the people on our tree. So all you have to do is take a tag. It's a patriotic Christmas tree to kind of set it aside. Take a tag, and there's 3 wishes that somebody is hoping to receive for Christmas or the holidays. And then you can purchase those items, wrap them, and put the tag back on it so they can distribute. And we're going to have that here through December 8th when they will be picked up. So it is a way to help those veterans who deserve more than anyone to be able to have their holiday wish granted. So there's a tree here, and then we get a lot of activity over at Diamond Community Park for the indoor sports, and we'll have a tree there also. So it's ready to go and get those tags. So nice collaboration.
In this kind of, if I recall, this offsets some of their funding that they would usually use for something similar to this that they can use for better things that they have targeted.
Yes.
They actually discontinued the program because they found that so many veterans were choosing amenities for their children as opposed to food. That they had to discontinue the program because the current goal of the program was the food voucher.
Right.
So when we had the opportunity to meet with them again, this is kind of a new offshoot program that allows the veteran to have a holiday in its fullest sense. And then I would just like to add to it that, you know, we have tournaments coming up, they'll be out for those. We have community events coming up, they'll be out for those. And you know, if you have any questions or concerns, if you are a veteran and you want to get in touch with a way to access this program, if you don't want to call here, call the Veteran Services Commission, and they will walk you through the process. And certainly we'll do what we can from this end as well.
So that's, oh, sorry.
I like the flyer, you put that together.
Yeah, so we're excited about the program. We really want to see a huge success. So we're also collecting for the CM Center, but that'll be in our newsletter and rolled out in our newsletter. But we just thought, let's get this started early. It's a time of year when we get a lot of people in and out. And
This will be some good year. We originally had,
Third year.
I was gonna say, we originally had the USO, but I had that when the USO closed. We went with this.
yeah.
And we still do our normal angel tree giving as well. So there's plenty of programs for people to choose from.
And that ends the administrative report.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Fire Department, Chief Schallenberg.
Thank you. Item number 1 is our monthly report.
Any questions?
Unbelievable response time. Wow.
Questions? Okay.
Item number 2 is a resolution by the Plain Township Board of Trustees, Stark County, Ohio, to authorize the reimbursement to Cameron Martin in the amount of $400 for healthcare membership according to provision 37 of the collective bargaining agreement, to be taken from 10A15.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Item number 3 is a resolution by Plain Township Board of Trustees to Dickerson Concrete for concrete and footers and removal of old concrete foundation materials at 2855 Easton Street, not to exceed $25,000 per attached quote taken from 21A02C. So this would be for the training building footers and cement work.
I will so move.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
And that concludes fire department business.
Chief, he'll take us to the road department, Mr. Iacino.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, item number 1 is the monthly report for September.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
We just talked about that today, Joe.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've had a couple resident issues after or insufficient notification failing to remove their vehicles from the street that delayed it, and unfortunately the contractor had to move out, so.
Hopefully, by the end of next week, everything's done. So,
But they're back.
And it'll be 17.6 for this year, which is about a 250% increase over.
It's
this.
amazing.
over 4 years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
And next year, we can use Nixle to notarize, or
Yeah,
to authorize, notify
Yeah.
residents, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So if we have a mild winter,
We will. I'm gonna do snow dance right now, Joe.
You guys had us on.
You must have read the last sentence on the next month's look ahead.
I've always had luck.
Yeah,
I may start getting
You've
places.
been on a roll,
I may
yeah.
even wait for droughts, but hey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Item number 2 is a resolution by the Board of Trustees to authorize the purchase of snowplow heading edges and snowplow hardware from Edmunds Supply not to exceed $3,600.
So moved.
okay, I'll second that.
This is just a
Still have to have them, you know?
This is a proactive preventative measure. All right, no further discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
That will take us to the zoning department. Mr. Farrar.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first item on the agenda will be the monthly report.
Look at the total receipts for 2017 compared to last year at this time. It's an increase of almost $32,000.
We've been very, very busy.
Yeah.
Well, getting everything automated 24/7 online should hopefully
Boy, that,
help you.
You can go home at night, Tom, instead of having to stay.
maybe.
Well, you guys did see Mally's open.
Yeah.
Up there.
Yeah.
They literally had a line out that store. a good
50%
portion of-
off chocolate.
Good portion of the day.
Yeah.
They were giving away chocolate.
50% off.
And if you notice the new commercial, we're getting some new commercial on Bolton now, which is good.
We also have the schedules opened up, but Mally's has proven to be world class.
Yeah.
I think you guys got an answer for John. Got our laundry record for the bus and lots of chocolate.
Next item on the zoning, cover for you here.
Yes,
Let's move this along.
Item number 2 is a resolution to declare items A through C as nuisance abatements.
I will so move.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
And item number 3 is a declaration, a resolution to declare items A and B as nuisance abatement.
I'll move on to zoning 3.
I'll second
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
it. Yes.
And that'll be all for zoning, sir.
Thank you. Takes us to Parks Department, Mr. Steinberg.
Thank you. Item number 1, and the only item is our monthly report.
I think we're all sad to see the farmer's market come to an end for this season.
What an
It's just-
incredible night that was. It was
Yeah.
unbelievable. I was fortunate enough to have my nieces and nephew over, and we got some pretty nice pictures, and it just was
We did have some nice weather too. Kind of for most of the year.
21 of 22 markets.
Yeah.
Were perfect weather.
I know.
Would have probably held the 22nd, but the thunder and the lightning in the air scared us away out of it early, so.
Yeah. And I don't think Rob has, said officially on record, but at the farmer's market, we were able to provide 22 free events, ranging from yoga to dog CPR to first aid to the giving out of the Narcan kits and being trained at those. Just kids' activities, well, we had those every week, but 22 programs, so we're
The
looking
live
up.
music was always nice.
Yeah,
that was good.
that was a nice touch.
Yeah, we had cooking
Yeah.
demonstrations, and we look to continue that next year. It was awesome.
Jenna did a wonderful job.
She is amazing.
We are very lucky to have her.
Anybody have any questions?
Well, she's by far my favorite.
Oh, if she can get Joe doing yoga, then.
I thought he did. Well, no, he chickened out.
There was some aerial footage
There-
there.
We may or may not have a picture that was like
He
the
was there,
Bigfoot
that's why it
sighting.
didn't happen.
Okay. If there's no further questions, that wrap it up. Takes us to the law director, Mr. Williams.
Yeah, we have for your consideration a resolution regarding transient vendors. We had previously put that under zoning, but now we're going to just amend our original transient vendor home rule, chapter 1000, to kind of address that issue with regard to some that have sprung up and maybe getting around the definition of transient vendors. So we've made a couple of those language changes, and that's what's before you.
Essentially, I'll move on transient vendor home rule update.
I'll second it.
Discussion. Clarification really is that the big catch was having to do with immediate payment versus delayed payment, and that's how they were getting around it. So whether it was energy, utility brokers and so forth that would be out, that was their loophole, so this will.
This closes that, we believe, and it essentially, what they were using was a requirement that they be looking for payment of, into the future, and they're saying, well, we're not asking for payment, we're just selling, whatever they were selling or touting at that particular time, and this eliminates the payment portion of that. So as long as they're soliciting for any goods that they're gonna provide in the future, then this would apply to them.
Now, it has to go in the repository twice, consecutive weeks, and then 30 days after that one, it'll go into effect.
Yes.
And we don't have to put the whole home rule in. We can briefly do a synopsis and say it's on file.
What we've done before, we can do that. What
Okay.
we did, I think, the first time was put it in.
Yeah, maybe
But
we will just
we
to
can-
be safe
yeah,
for this
it's
one.
usually easier if we just put it in. I
Yeah.
know it's a little more
That's
expensive,
all
but
right. That
it's
was
a one-time
covered.
expense. The only other issue is, it's in there as a $100 fine, should it be violated. I wanted to bring that back up because now's your chance to change that if you want, or to make it a graduated fine, we could change that, $100 first time, $250 the second, whatever you guys want to do, should you be in favor of this. I just wanted to make it aware that you could address that situation now up to $1,000.
And when you made it graduated with alarms, you saw false alarms, how
It
it
drops.
really dropped.
It
I mean,
does, sure.
and it's still dropping, as you saw from the report tonight.
Sure.
So my recommendation is graduated for repeat offenders.
what I had written in, just, and you don't have to do that, but what I had written in a different version was $100 for the first offense, $250 for each subsequent. But again, it's totally up to you. You have discretion between 0 and 1,000.
Keep in mind, when the sheriff's office goes out, if these people, I had no idea, they give them a warning. So
Right.
it's not like it's, the first time, here's your fee.
Yeah.
They talk to them, they give them a warning, they try to get them turned around on how to do it, so.
You see a lot of the usual customers, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, well
That would help.
then,
Yeah.
Mhm.
for 250, let's make it a 3-tier scale, 100, 250 the second time, and every time after that, they haven't learned by now, $500.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
You can't follow the rules, as I gotta say, there's nothing worse than even just when night and being able to sit on the couch and up, anywhere between 7:30 and 9, somebody ringing the doorbell, dogs going nuts. To only find it's that,
Yeah.
that's annoying.
100, 250, 500?
Yes. I mean, that's just my recommendation.
No, I'm for it.
I like
You
it.
okay with that?
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Lino,
Yes.
Mr. Haas,
Yes.
Mr. Sabo.
Yes.
And Tom, I'll get with you after. Make sure
Okay.
you've got that.
Perfect.
It takes communications, Mrs. Campbell.
The first communications I have is from Barry Kindy, and it's in regards to the Pembroke Homeowners Association. And it reads, greetings, Plain Township Trustees Scott and John, and Plain Sheriff Sergeant William Koenig. I and the Pembroke Board extend a thank you to you three. Though your portion of talking went beyond the 15 to 20 minutes, but that was all fine and good, as I did not want to stifle good interaction amongst the homeowners and you three. The topics overall were very informative. With your presence, it probably headed off various questions that may have fell on the board's lap, and I feel you gave the homeowners a positive feeling that you're involved with the various issues to the best of your abilities. You helped make our meeting be an informative and productive meeting. We are always open to your guidance, and we sincerely appreciate and thank you for your services to our allotment and to our township. With a sincere thank you, Barry, and he's the president of the Homeowners Association. So although you went over the allotment. And then item number 2, I added on the agenda tonight, and I'll ask our IT director to get on all of our social media, as a benefit barbecue fundraiser that will be held at the VFW to benefit a fellow employee of the sheriff's office suffering with a major medical issue, and all proceeds will go towards offsetting the medical costs. And this is on November 4th from 4 p.m. until 11 at the VFW on 1935 Avalon Avenue, and the cost is only a $10 donation. They'll have basket raffles, 50/50s, and so on. So I'll get that out on all social media. And that's the end of communications.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Brings us to the portion of the meeting, public speaks. Is there anybody that wishes to address the board? Just ask you to state your name, address for the record. Okay. Includes public speaks, concerns of trustees.
Thank you, Mr. President.
There's a couple things I just want to rattle off. I want to give a public thank you to Best Turf. I know, Lisa, you communicated to us last week that they donated a pallet of sod for veterans parked up around our Keystone Memorial. I mean, again, because of partners like this, whether, most of them haven't even been solicited. These are folks that willingly just come forward. That's such a value. So thanks to our friends at Best Turf for the donation of the sod pallet as well. I want to give just a thanks to Bob Bond. I even copied you guys on an email over in Saratoga Hills with how the Stark Parks Trail has been changed through some of the wetlands area over there. Combine that with the fact that how Werner Church and Apple Grove got realigned, so essentially old Werner Church Road, a portion of it's been ground up with the bridge taken out. Unfortunately, when people have GPS, it's not showing as updated. So I had a resident in my allotment say, hey, over the weekend, they had a minivan that literally followed off the road. Now, it was a gravel road, went back to the trail, and next thing you know, they got so far back, it wasn't that it was soft, but they didn't know how to drive in reverse is the explanation. So Stark Parks, as soon as I got it yesterday, I put it in everybody's laps for awareness. They were out getting the gate up today. The gate was something that was in the works, but they expedited it. So for the sake of media, if there's anything that goes in paper, people see folks driving four-wheelers, dirt bikes, ATVs, dune buggies on any Stark Parks trails. It's not permitted. We're asking that they please report it. I mean, it is a safety concern. Because in this situation, it was a mother with a young child. So thanks to Bob and his team for the quick turnaround on that. And then the last, outside of that, the next item I had was, we've been talking about House Bill 69 that's going on down in the legislature. There was some additional testimony we're monitoring closely that has to deal with TIFs and how it erodes part of the tax base. And this, essentially, this proposed bill will force a municipality to keep a township full should they TIF something, and we're specifically looking strictly at safety services.
Fire and EMS.
Fire and EMS. So, based upon the last hearing and some comments, there is some pushback by one of the building industry organizations, so we're waiting to see where they steer this next, because as we've talked about on a number of fronts, this is one of those cruxes where we don't have a say, and this could be a tool that gives us a say, at least on one front, not all of them, but it's a step in the right direction. So
It's definitely a good first step. And, you know, trouble with those TIFs, once they become a reality, it affects all those taxing authorities that are in that jurisdiction. And in this particular case, we're going to hopefully be protected in our fire and EMS levies, but that still could affect road levies and.
Oh, MRDE,
and-
yeah.
Absolutely.
Park.
Exactly. So, as well as our sheriff's levy. So, you know, it's a good first step, but, you know, we'll see how this goes. If it doesn't get a whole lot of pushback, then the next step is, let's see if we can't get other language in there to protect some of those other flags.
I think those were the only items I had, so that'll close concerns of trustees, concerns of the fiscal officer.
No concerns.
Move on. Any special recognition for our new cameraman tonight?
Yeah, he almost has a vigil there.
Okay.
It's far more attentive than our usual way.
That'll take us to approval of the minutes for September 26, 2017, and I will so move.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes. We do have a need for executive session, so be it hereby resolved by the Plain Township Board of Trustees, Stark County, Ohio, to adjourn the executive session at 6:34 p.m. from this regular meeting is authorized under Ohio Revised Code 121.22G for the purpose and consideration of 1F, compensation of a public employee or official, 2B, the sale of property by a competitive bid to prevent the disclosure of information that would provide competitive advantage. 3, a conference with the law director or other retained counsel concerning pending or imminent court action.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.